At Honey Lake Clinic, one thing that really differentiates us is our holistic view of an individual. We believe that God made us in three spheres: spirit, mind, and body, just like the Trinity is God the Father, sort of the mind, God the Son, sort of body, flesh, and God the Holy Spirit, that spiritual aspect. So in that triune God, we're made in His likeness, and we have these three spheres: spirit, mind, and body. And a lot of parts of the Bible and various verses talk about that three spheres: love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. So at Honey Lake Clinic, we really try to address all three spheres as important. We need to address them, look at them, help a person become more equipped in them, and integrate them together, because they all do play off of each other. If we're struggling spiritually, that's going to affect us psychologically and physically. If we're struggling physically, that can have psychological and spiritual effects on us. The main biological piece we're looking at is our brain chemistry. That's the most incredible gift God gave us, is our brain. But we're usually not taught how to steward it well. So that physical piece needs to be fed. So good nutrition, good exercise, relaxation skills, how to be able to help the brain work well. No drugs, no alcohol, caffeine, tobacco, those kind of things, so that we're not putting toxins into our brain so it can think and function well. Then we have the psychological piece, and that's where we have some significant therapy with master's level or higher therapists that really dig in and help us understand how we think, how our mind works, how God designed our mind to work in this incredible, powerful mind, but we're usually not taught very well how it functions. You know, we take a lot of classes growing up in math and English and art, but nobody really teaches us a decision-making class or elements of our psychology or why we do what we do. So that's all psychology is understanding why we do what we do. So we put a lot of time and effort with good expertise in helping understand the psychological or the mind aspect. And the most important of those three spheres is the spiritual component. And just as you walk onto this campus, there's just a peace, there's a love, there's sort of a sanctuary that's here where you just feel the Holy Spirit here. And we're not this real magical, spiritual, and euphoria, but it's a way to, we work on how do we understand who God is, how He reveals Himself in His Word to us, how to have a relationship and grow that relationship with God, how to really connect with God in a powerful way. With that spiritual understanding and connection with God, we dig into the Word to see, well then, what does God instruct us to do? That abundant living just doesn't magically occur. We need that relationship with Him, but then follow the life instructions that He gives us in the BIBLE, the best instruction book for living every day. So as we look at all three of those spheres, spirit, mind, and body, decision making is really where all three of those spheres come together. At Honey Lake Clinic, a huge part of the treatment we provide is a spiritually dynamic process, helping people understand God, connect with God, listen to God, talk to God, and feel comfortable just relating with God, really seeing who He is as the God revealed in the Bible, not maybe the sort of distorted view of God that we had growing up, or because of our relationships with our father or father figures that we see, seeing God as sort of that a reflection of that earthly father who was maybe judgmental, critical, unloving. We really help a person connect with God in a spiritual way, in a phenomenal way. But in the process of doing that, science is very important to us. And we want to use evidence-based practices or scientifically based practices to help us really engage the process of understanding psychologically and physiologically with our body and our mind how to really incorporate those spiritual aspects and dive into those spiritual aspects. So we incorporate psychiatric medicine, physical medicine about the body and how the body affects our brain chemistry. We promote fitness with exercise and have a fitness instructor here with a gym and a pool and some athletic events. But we also incorporate a diet and nutrition. We don't have caffeine on campus. We have minimal sugar. We use whole grain flour and not white flour. So really understanding what are we putting in our body, because we want a great brain. And so we want to have good circulatory system to get oxygen to the brain, as well as putting good nutrients into the brain. And we know that exercise is a great antidepressant. It helps us with stress management and stress relief. Releases endorphins in the brain. Another element of that sort of science-based, evidence-based practice here at Honey Lake Clinic is really what are some of those psychological principles or psychological, what we call therapeutic modalities or psychotherapies that we utilize that science has shown to be very effective. Some of those are things called cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectic behavioral therapy, emotion-focused therapy, motivational interviewing, psychodynamic psychotherapy. We use all these and incorporate them in the psychological teachings that we have and the skills that we teach and how we interact with patients in a very specific way, because we want to do things that have shown to be effective and proven helpful to people in psychologically renewing their mind and transforming their lives. Another significant area of spirituality that science has shown to be effective is when you match up a patient and therapist that have the same faith, outcomes are better. When you give patients homework, outcomes are better. When you incorporate faith principles and call on God, have a higher power, practice spiritual disciplines like confession, prayer, forgiveness, outcomes are better. So not only are there psychological therapies like CBT and DBT and all those things I mentioned helpful, but also these spiritual practices are powerful as well. A lot of programs forget about this whole spiritual realm and they call themselves holistic, but there's maybe equine therapy or aromatherapy. There's really not a divine power. We're looking at the Bible in a sort of a programmatic kind of way, in a practical way of how to help a person understand what's going on in their mind using those spiritual principles. So at Honey Lake Clinic, those are some of the evidence-based practices, the science that we use to help really gird and be the foundation for that spirit, mind, body holistic approach that we have that makes us quite unique.